My name is Hannah Whitmore, and at 30 years old, I thought I had finally carved out a life that was entirely mine. After years of long nights at a financial firm in Indianapolis, I managed to buy a sleek two-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood. It was supposed to be my safe place, a space where the only drama came from the crime shows I streamed on Friday nights. But that illusion shattered one Saturday morning when the doorbell rang 3 times, sharp, deliberate, like someone staking a claim. I padded over in my slippers, already uneasy. When I opened the door, my parents stood there, flanking 5 enormous suitcases like soldiers. My mother, Linda, clutched her purse like it held her last lifeline. My father, Gerald, wore an expression so calm it seemed rehearsed. "Hannah, we need to stay here," Mom said quickly. "We lost the house." The words hit me harder than I expected. Their brick home in Carmel had been in the family for decades, fully paid off after Grandpa left them money. "You lost it? How?" I asked. Their faces looked desperate, but not panicked. Too composed, too tidy. I let them in because, well, they were my parents. What else was I supposed to do? They rolled their bags inside as if they already knew where each would go. Mom hugged me tightly. "You're such a good daughter, Hannah." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but under it I caught something sharper, almost like a warning. Dad muttered a quick, "Thanks," before hauling one suitcase straight down the hall like he owned the place. My chest tightened. Guests wait to be shown around. They don't march in like residents. That night, sleep eluded me. My parents' story rattled around in my mind like loose change. Bad investments, they had said. But they hadn't carried a mortgage in years. How do you lose a debt-free house overnight? Around 2 a.m., I crept into the kitchen for water. There on the counter sat 2 brand new smartphones, still in their cases, and a key ring with a tag that read, Unit 45, Uptown Storage. I froze. Why would people who'd supposedly lost everything suddenly have storage rentals and fresh tech? The next morning, Linda bustled around the kitchen like she owned it. She was humming a tune I recognized from my childhood while flipping pancakes. "Good morning, honey," she chirped. "Thought I'd make breakfast. This place really feels like home already." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Already?" At the table, I forced casualness into my tone. "So, what's your plan? Are you looking for a new place yet?" Mom's fork froze midair. Then she smiled too quickly. "We're still figuring it out." Dad added, "Don't worry, we won't be a burden." His eyes stayed glued to the television. My gut screamed. Something was off. They weren't asking me for money, but they weren't behaving like people who had lost everything either. They were settling in. The more they dodged my questions, the more I felt like a stranger in my own home. I excused myself, retreated to my room, and picked up my phone. My fingers trembled as I typed a message to Daniel Ross, my old college friend who'd become a lawyer. "My parents say they lost their house. Can you check property records? Please." His reply came instantly. "Give me a day. I'll find out." I set my phone down, my heart thudding against my ribs, because deep down, I already knew the truth was uglier than they wanted me to believe. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what Daniel might uncover. By the 3rd day, it no longer felt like my parents were visiting. It felt like they had claimed the condo as their own. Mom rearranged the throw pillows in the living room with an approving smile. "Much better," she murmured, as if I'd been waiting years for her interior design expertise. Dad had taken to sprawling across my couch, remote in hand, flipping through channels like it was still the living room in Carmel. Every time I asked about their next steps, they brushed me off with the same hollow promise. "We'll figure it out." But the cracks widened. One afternoon, I caught Dad at my desk going through my unopened mail. He didn't even look guilty. "Thought I'd help sort it," he said gruffly. Except I noticed some envelopes already tucked neatly in a pile he hadn't mentioned. Letters from my bank. The violation burned in my chest. What right did he have to touch them? That evening over dinner, Mom dropped Evan's name casually. "Your brother's doing fine, working on a big new venture." I set my fork down, pulse spiking. Evan and I hadn't spoken in nearly a year, not since he'd borrowed money and never repaid it. "What venture?" I asked. Dad coughed, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, just some business idea." Mom's eyes flicked to his, sharp and warning. "You know how your brother is," she added too quickly. I leaned back in my chair, my appetite gone. Every mention of Evan felt rehearsed, planted. And that storage unit key I'd seen, had they hidden more there? I felt my sanctuary shrinking with every word, every evasive glance between them. That night, Daniel's message finally came through. Checked records. Your parents didn't lose the house. They sold it. $950,000. Money went straight to Evan Whitmore. He bought a property here in Indy under his name last month. The blood drained from my face. My parents hadn't been victims at all. They hadn't lost their home. They had chosen to funnel nearly $1 million into Evan's pockets, then shown up at my door like beggars. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I typed back, "Are you sure?" Seconds later, Daniel called. His voice was steady, low. "Hannah, I have the deed transfer right in front of me. Your parents signed it. It's airtight. And there's more. The property Evan bought, he put Sienna Cole's name on it too." Sienna. My stomach twisted. Evan's girlfriend had always been trouble, sharp-tongued, eyes fixed on every man's wallet in the room. Grandma Margaret had once called her a fox dressed as a saint. As if on cue, Grandma dropped by the next morning. She looked me up and down, concern etched into her wrinkles. "You look like you haven't slept in days. What's going on?" I told her everything. The lost house, the evasive answers, Daniel's discovery. She listened silently, lips pressed tight, then slammed her palm on the table. "They didn't lose a damn thing," she spat. "They gave it to Evan because Sienna's got him wrapped around her finger. That woman's poison, Hannah." Mark my words. Her words cut through me like ice. This wasn't just about favoritism. This was a deliberate choice. Once again, Evan had been elevated while I was expected to carry the fallout. As Grandma left, she clasped my hands hard. "You've got to protect yourself, Hannah. Your father's temper, your mother's guilt games, don't let them corner you. Promise me." I nodded numbly, but inside I was already breaking apart. Because my parents hadn't just lied. They had chosen Evan again, and they were already trying to plant themselves in my life like roots I couldn't dig out. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could bite my tongue. The following evening, I sat alone at my dining table, Daniel's email open on my laptop. The deed transfer glared back at me like a scar I couldn't erase. Gerald and Linda's signatures, inked with intention, not desperation, proved they had sold the house willingly. The money trail was clear, a wire to Evan's account, then a swift purchase of a sprawling property in downtown Indianapolis, with both his and Sienna Cole's names stamped on the deed. My parents hadn't been homeless victims. They had been co-conspirators in my brother's rise. My jaw clenched as I heard laughter from the living room. Mom was knitting on my couch, humming under her breath. Dad was flipping through a magazine as though the condo had always been theirs. My sanctuary was suffocating me. I stood abruptly, my phone in hand. "We need to talk." My voice was calm, but every nerve in my body was crackling. Mom looked up, her tone sugar-sweet. "What's wrong, Hannah?" Dad lowered the magazine slowly, his eyes narrowing. "What's this about?" I didn't sit. Instead, I held up my phone, Daniel's evidence glowing across the screen. "I know you didn't lose the house. You sold it. For $950,000, and you gave it all to Evan. Care to explain why you lied?" The room froze. Mom's knitting slipped to the floor, her face draining of color. Dad leaned forward, his jaw tightening like a vice. "Who told you that?" he demanded. "It doesn't matter," I said, my voice sharper now. "What matters is you came here, lied to my face, and expected me to play along while you handed my brother everything." Mom scrambled for words, her eyes wide. "We were going to tell you, honey. It's complicated." "No," I snapped. "You had your chance. Show me your bank records right now, or you leave tonight." Dad rose slowly, his fists clenched. His voice was venomous. "You don't get to talk to us like that, after everything we've done for you." I took a step closer, refusing to flinch. "What you've done is betray me." And then it happened. His hand shot out, faster than I could react. A sharp crack echoed across the room as his palm connected with my cheek. Pain stung hot against my skin. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, everything was silent except for my own ragged breathing. My father, the man who once carried me on his shoulders at the state fair, had just struck me in my own home. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. But she didn't move. She didn't stop him. I staggered back, my hand pressed to the burning mark on my face. "How dare you?" I whispered. "You think you can hit me in my own house?" A knock rattled the door. My neighbor, Mr. Bennett, a retired cop with a quiet watchfulness, peeked in. concern etched across his weathered face. "Everything okay, Hannah?" I forced a strained smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Just a family discussion, Mr. Bennett. Thanks for checking." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to Gerald's towering frame and my tear-streaked face. Finally, he gave a slow nod. "I'm right next door if you need me," he said firmly before retreating. When the door clicked shut, silence thundered through the condo. My cheek pulsed, my pulse raced, but inside something snapped. "You have 30 minutes to pack and leave," I said, my voice flat, unshakable. "Or I call the police." Mom burst into tears, reaching out as if her hands could rewrite the damage. "Hannah, please, we're your parents." Dad's eyes burned with rage. "Ungrateful brat. We gave you everything." I tightened my grip on the phone. "You gave him everything, and you used me. The clock is ticking." The seconds dragged like hours as they stared back at me, one with fury, the other with desperation. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of either. The condo felt like a pressure cooker as the minutes crawled by. Mom sat on the couch, sobbing into her hands, muttering words about loyalty and blood. Dad paced like a caged animal, his boots heavy against my hardwood floor. Every slam of his heel felt like an intrusion, like he was daring me to back down. I stood by the kitchen counter, my phone lit in my palm, eyes fixed on the time. 20 minutes left, I said coldly. Dad stopped pacing and glared at me. His jaw flexed, veins standing out on his temple. "You wouldn't dare throw us out. You're too soft, Hannah. You always were." "Try me," I shot back. My voice didn't shake, though my heart pounded so loudly it felt like the walls could hear it. Mom looked up. Her mascara smudged into dark rings. "Sweetheart, please. We only wanted to give your brother a chance. He has vision. He's going to build something great. You'll see." I laughed bitterly. "You gave him almost $1 million, Mom. You didn't just give him a chance. You gave him everything, and you lied to me to cover it up." Dad took a step closer, fists tightening. "Watch your mouth. You don't talk to your parents like that." I raised the phone, thumb hovering over the keypad. 10 minutes, Dad. Threaten me again, and I'm dialing before the clock runs out." The tension was suffocating, so thick it clung to my skin. Finally, the timer reached 0. My thumb pressed the numbers. 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" The operator's calm voice filled the air. "My parents are trespassing in my condo," I said steadily, though my throat burned. "They refused to leave." The officers arrived within 15 minutes. Their firm knocks broke the standoff like a thunderclap. I opened the door, relief flooding me as 2 uniformed figures stepped inside. "This is my property," I explained quickly, handing over my lease. "They've been staying here against my wishes." The older officer, calm and measured, turned to my parents. "Do you have proof of residence here? Documents? Mail? Anything?" Dad's face turned red. "She's lying. This is our home too." "Do you have documentation?" The officer pressed. Silence. They had nothing. "This condo belongs to Miss Whitmore," the officer said firmly. "If she wants you out, you have to leave." Dad exploded. "You can't do this. She's our daughter." He lunged forward, spittle flying. "You'll pay for this, Hannah. You hear me?" The younger officer stepped in, voice sharp. "Sir, back off now. Threaten her again, and you'll be leaving in cuffs." Mom grabbed Dad's arm, her voice shaking. "Gerald, stop!" The officers gave them 10 minutes to pack. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them unravel. Mom stuffed clothes into a suitcase with trembling hands, whispering prayers under her breath. Dad yanked drawers open, slamming them shut so hard the walls rattled. When they finally dragged their bags to the entryway, Dad turned and spat venom. "You're no daughter of mine." The words sliced deep, but I didn't flinch. My voice was ice. "You made that clear when you chose Evan." Mom reached out, her hand trembling. "Hannah, please, we're family." I stepped back. Not anymore. The officers escorted them out. Their figures disappeared down the hallway until the echo of their suitcase wheels faded into silence. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a shaky breath. The condo was quiet again. But it wasn't the silence of loneliness anymore. It was the silence of reclaiming my own space. Still, as I pressed my hand to the faint sting on my cheek, I knew the battle wasn't over. People like Gerald and Linda didn't surrender easily. Weeks slipped by. But the fallout of that night spread like ripples on water. At first, the condo felt almost unnervingly quiet. No humming from mom in the kitchen, no thud of dad's boots against the floorboards. But gradually, the silence changed from suffocating to liberating. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling someone else's weight pressing on my chest. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails without reading, and silenced every ping that might have pulled me back into their orbit. Yet in a small city like Indianapolis, word travels fast. Neighbors I'd known for years began looking at me differently, their smiles tinged with suspicion. A cashier at the local grocery store whispered, "Poor Gerald and Linda, kicked out by their own daughter." The smear campaign was in full swing. My parents told anyone who'd listen that I was heartless, ungrateful, that I'd abandoned them when they needed me most. For someone who had built her career on reputation and trust, the gossip burned like acid. I wasn't just fighting for peace anymore. I was fighting for my name. So I called Daniel. "Can we sue for defamation?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Absolutely," he replied without hesitation. "Their lies are damaging your character and your professional credibility. We have the evidence, Hannah." The court battle was swift. My parents didn't even show up. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering them to retract their statements and pay damages. I didn't care about the money. I cared about reclaiming my truth. Meanwhile, Evan's empire of illusions crumbled spectacularly. Sienna had convinced him to mortgage the property and funnel the money into some once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. When the market crashed, she vanished with what remained. Within months, the house foreclosed. Evan was left drowning in debt, my parents alongside him, clutching at the ashes of everything they had gambled away. Grandma Margaret kept me updated, though she never sugarcoated the details. "They're in some cheap motel now," she said one Sunday over coffee. "Gerald's pride is bleeding him dry, and Linda looks like a ghost." Evan's blaming everyone but himself. Her sharp eyes softened as she leaned closer. "But don't you dare feel guilty. They dug this pit with their own hands." I stared into my mug, the steam curling upward like a silent prayer. Sometimes I wonder if I should have let them stay, at least until they figured things out. Margaret's palm landed firmly over mine. "No, Hannah. Protecting yourself isn't cruelty. It's survival. Love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's exploitation." Her words settled deep, filling cracks I hadn't realized were still open. She was right. My parents hadn't wanted a roof. They wanted control. They hadn't wanted my help. They wanted my silence. One evening, while sorting through old boxes, I stumbled across a folder Dad had left behind in his haste. Inside were drafts of mortgage paperwork with my name listed as guarantor. My stomach lurched. They hadn't just planned to take my home. They had planned to tie me to Evan's debts forever. That discovery ended any trace of doubt. My decision to cut ties wasn't just justified. It was necessary. Now, when I walk through my condo, every room feels different. Not haunted, not heavy, but sacred. My space, my rules, my proof that I am enough on my own. So I'll leave you with this. What would you do if the people you love crossed a line so deep it shattered everything you thought you knew? Would you forgive them, or would you protect your peace no matter the cost? If my story resonated with you, subscribe. There are more stories to tell about betrayal, survival, and the power of choosing yourself.